The following program is intended for the training of professional firefighters and paramedics. This program is intended as a resource, not a replacement for any of your training. It is not intended to be an endorsement of any patient care activities which may be depicted. Always consult your protocols or medical director first regarding any medical procedure relative to the delivery of patient care. The content of this programming may be considered both verbally and visually graphic in nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Dispatch engine 5-2 responding.
Hello and welcome to Palm Beach County Fire Rescue's distance learning program for area firefighters.
On today's episode of the Hot Zone, we'll visit with Captain Bill Gustin, who will share some valuable information on South Florida firefighting tactics.
Then we'll have another installment from our series which focuses on the 14 traits of leadership.
Captain Bill Gustin is with Metro-Dade Fire Rescue. He's been in the fire service for nearly 40 years. He's a nationally recognized instructor and has been a keynote speaker at the Fire Department Instructors Conference in Indianapolis. Here's Bill with his presentation on South Florida firefighting tactics.
Hello, brothers and sisters of the fire service, and a special hello to my brothers and sisters on Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. I'm very proud to teach for Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. Our subject today is hose line operations for fires in multiple dwellings. These would be apartment buildings, condos, hotels, motels, buildings that are typically by height are not required to have standpipes. However, a lot of these same tactics apply for the lower floors of standpipe equipped buildings where we decide it's easier to stretch off the apparatus than to stretch from a standpipe. A little bit about myself. I was, until a few years ago, a resident of Palm Beach County, so I am familiar somewhat with your department, and I know what a world-class organization it is, and again, how proud I am to be able to teach for Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. I am a captain with the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department, a little bit south of here, and I've been there for 36 years. I've been in the fire service since, as you can see this young fellow right there, since 1973. So that gives me 41 years on the job, and yes, I'm still kicking because I love this job, I love this profession, and I love the people in this profession. And that's why I continue to work and why I teach. There's two key ingredients for having a successful operation in a multiple family dwelling, and that is size up and that is pre-fire planning. The time to decide the tactics and strategy to be used at a fire in a multiple dwelling is 3 o'clock in the afternoon during pre-fire planning, not 3 o'clock in the morning when smoke is showing and people are at the windows trying to get out of their building. You have to know before you go. You may not even know where to spot your apparatus until you actually get into the complex. When you have hallways that are this long, it's very difficult for you to intelligently fight the fire without any pre-fire information. That's why pre-fire planning is absolutely key in these buildings. Again, the time to choose, the tactics and strategy to be used is during pre-fire planning. Let's look at some considerations for a hose stretch that is specific to fires in multiple dwellings. The first is the location of the fire, which may not be readily apparent when you arrive. You may have to take some looking. Do not allow the police or civilians to do your size up for you. They could lead you into an area that, yes, there could be smoke showing, yes, there could be fire showing, but you could be hundreds of feet away from where you need to be. The path to the fire, which doorway, stairway, hallway are you going to use to reach the fire? What is the condition of the attack stairwell? Is it closed, enclosed? Can you use it in an area of refuge? Or is it full of smoke like a chimney? And understand rapidly how quickly a stairway can turn into a chimney by just simply opening a door to a fire floor that's full of smoke. Does the stairway have a well? In other words, can you stand at the bottom of the stairway and look straight up in an area that is large enough to accommodate a hose line? If you are, that's great. 150-foot section could take you as high as the 5th floor. What access do you have in the stairwell? We're lucky here in South Florida that most of our stairwells on multiple family dwellings open to the outside. Therefore, we can open that door and go directly from the apparatus into the stairwell. What kind of hallways do we have? Is it your exterior hallway, balcony type building, which is so common in the Sun Belt? Or is it an interior hallway, which makes operations a lot more difficult and dangerous? What is the condition of the fire apartment? Is the fire being contained within the fire apartment with the apartment door closed and intact? If it is, that's great. Chances are great that we can stretch directly to the fire apartment with a dry hose line, pull up additional hose, charge it, and then force entry. The methods that we're going to use to get that hose line up to the upper floors. Would it be a conventional stairway stretch, which a lot of us haven't done since the fire academy? Is it going to be a well stretch? Are we going to use a rope? Are we going to take it up a ladder? Are we going to use a pike pole? Again, time to choose this tactic is during pre-fire planning. Does the building have a standpipe? Just because a building has a standpipe doesn't necessarily mean you have to use it. You get a fire and it's within range where you can drop a rope bag and hoist a pre-connect. Why in the world would you want to rely on an inherently unreliable standpipe? Stretch off your apparatus when you can. Sprinklers are great, but keep in mind, brothers and sisters, that when a building is fully sprinklered, the fire code allows a variance. It allows the minimal travel distance between the apartment and the closest means of egress to be 200 feet, which means your stairways could be 400 feet apart. That could be a heck of a long hose stretch and the amount of hose. And we're going to look at a reliable method for accurately determining, not estimating, accurately determining the amount of hose necessary to reach the fire apartment or room and additional hose necessary to penetrate any point of that apartment. The number of firefighters, brothers and sisters, don't make the mistake of attempting a hose advance that requires 6 firefighters when you only have 3. You're going to have to try something different. For instance, you arrive alone on a fire at 4:30 in the morning in a building full of sleeping elderly people. You better do something fast. And if you don't have the personnel to rapidly engage in an interior attack, then what's the next best thing? You're going to have to hit it from the outside. You wouldn't be watching this presentation today if you weren't a student of the fire service and you understand that attacking a fire from the outside, directing a stream from the outside, is no longer something that is unacceptable in the fire service. It's quite acceptable. In fact, if directing a stream from the outside is so bad, why do fire departments, why have they developed on floor below nozzles for directing streams into an apartment when there's a wind-driven fire? What about this wind, speed, and direction? Yes, it will have a bearing on our attack. Our strategy for the most part is going to be protect in place. We do not have the resources on most departments to physically rescue people from harm. We're going to take the harm away from the people by putting out the fire. If the fire is in a public hallway, we're going to rely and hope we can rely on the compartmentation afforded by a residential occupancy to keep the fire out of the apartment. You're going to get 911 calls for people trapped. They can't go out into a smoky hallway. Are they completely safe in their apartment? No, they're not completely safe, but they're a heck of a lot safer in their apartment than they're going to be in a smoky hallway. I kind of get a kick out of this when a fire alarm goes off in a residential building full of old people. There's a fire in this building. Evacuate the building. Do not use the elevators. Well, that's real comforting to this gentleman right here in a motorized wheelchair. Remember that big city tactics require big city resources. Again, don't attempt a hose stretch or advance that requires more firefighters than you have. which means that your staffing may indicate your tactics. Maybe the best you can do with the limited resources you have is hit the fire from with a straight stream from below, throw a ladder up, and finish the job. Now let's make a distinction here between stretching and advancing. Stretching is what we do with an uncharged line, and you can stretch a lot of uncharged line with just a few firefighters, but once that line becomes charged, we're then advancing, and you're going to need a firefighter at just about every change of direction, change of elevation, every friction point. All right, the first type of building that I want to look at is very common in the Sun Belt. This is the exterior hallway building. See them all over South Florida. And we're going to say that we're within the range of a 200-foot pre-connect. In this case, an officer and firefighter will ascend up to the fire floor, right to the fire floor, and if it's just a second floor fire, reach down with a pike pole and lift up the nozzle. If you're above the second floor, throw the rope down, tie some type of quick knot that can be easily untied and tied. Try to bring the hose up underneath the railing to eliminate that severe possible kink that could occur when the hose goes over the railing. Here we're knocking a section of railing out. Here we're not, because we're operating in drilling in an occupied apartment. Now, you're going to be hoisting this hose at a reasonable distance upwind of the fire. And as we stretch towards the fire, be careful. Do not pass or stand in front of a window that could possibly vent. You're going to have to stop and then pull up enough hose to reach the fire apartment from that window, plus at least an additional 50 feet to hit any point in the average size apartment. You must secure your hose to the railing before it's charged. If it's not, you're going to end up with all your hose down in the parking lot. All right, sometimes you have to be meticulous if you have slippery hose and you're not able to secure a girth hitch behind a double coupling. Here we are, we're masking up, ready to go, est out, masked up, and ready to make our attack. Now, what if we're beyond the range of our pre-connect? In this case, when pre-connects fall short, one option is to stretch 2.5 or 3-inch hose. Now, I would not bring the gated Y up onto an exterior hallway. This almost turned out to be ugly. There's a department that configures a hose bed with a modified Minuteman so they can bring a 3-inch line into a courtyard, and at the base of the building, then they will lower down hose. In this case, this is going to require two companies. The company that's going to go up into the building, we're going to call them the firefighters. And then the mules that are going to bring up that relatively large diameter hose, 2.5 or 3-inch hose with a gated Y, and we're going to drop hose from, say, the second floor and the third floor, connecting it to a 100-foot high-rise or extension pack. Again, we secure it with a tubular webbing, and in this case, we could drop hose lines if we had fire extending from the second to the third. What about garden apartments? What we're talking about here is a building that has open or semi-open breezeways or landings where you'd have 4 or 2 apartments per landing. In this case, if it's the second floor, here we're bringing it up to the mid-landing between the second and first floor. We'll pull up enough hose that we will have enough hose to maneuver within that apartment. Average size apartment, 50 feet. Notice we bring the hose in on the hinge side of the door. This way, we know that that door in an apartment is going to open up against a wall. When it opens up against the wall, we got a straight shot. If we brought it in on the latch side, we may have to take an immediate 180-degree turn as soon as we made entrance. Again, we're going to secure our line. Now, this is a Cleveland load or a coil load, where the hose is coiled around the nozzle. This is ideal for this type of application if you have adequate pressure and hose that is inherently kink resistant. Let's talk about courtyard apartments. You're looking at the fire, but you're not in the entrance of the building. The entrance of the building is remote from your apparatus. You're in a driveway or a parking lot. In this case, could you ladder an adjoining apartment? Take a hose line up a ladder, go through the adjoining apartment, out into the exterior hallway, walk your nozzle in 50 feet out to the door of the fire apartment. Secure it, charge it, and then make your entry. Again, the hose line is coming up the side of the building through an adjoining apartment, out into the public exterior hallway, and into the fire apartment. Okay, let's say that we've got an interior hallway building and it's dirty, it's full of smoke because the door to the fire apartment is open. In this case, these firefighters are playing it safe. They're taking their line up the stairs, through the adjoining apartment, down the public hallway, and straight into the fire apartment. Don't ever attempt to flake out hose line that is uncharged in a smoky hallway. You won't have your protection that you need, and you can't see what you're doing. Here, we're laddering an apartment, laddering the balcony. We drop a rope, we bring up our hose line. Now here it's a different apartment. Here it's a burned out apartment where we're drilling, but same scenario. Bring the hose line up, check the door to the public hallway. It's an enclosed hallway. The door is cool. We open up the door. Uh-oh, the hallway is full of smoke. In this case, we are not going to leave the refuge of this fire adjoining apartment unless we have a charge line. So we're going to pull up enough hose to A, reach from the adjoining apartment to the fire apartment, and B, enough hose to maneuver through the average size apartment, which is going to be about 50 feet. I realize this looks a little easier than it would be with furniture, and it is. We're going to flake out our hose. We're going to secure it with a tubular webbing. Then we're going to mask up, glove up, hood up, charge the line, flow the line before we leave the refuge of the adjoining apartment. We open up the door. We have the hose line secure. We make our way down the hallway. This is a 3-firefighter evolution. That is the nozzle man, the officer, and the mule that is going to at first position himself at the door to the adjacent apartment, pulling the hose from the adjacent apartment into the public hallway. As the nozzle team moves down the hallway, as the nozzle team reaches the door to the fire apartment, they'll operate the nozzle on the fire. The mule will go back and grab the coupling back 50 feet from the nozzle, walk it up to the door to the fire apartment. Now we have enough hose to maneuver through the average size apartment, and the mule can now take a position at the door to the fire apartment. So what you see here is nozzle firefighter, officer, and mule, which is working at the door position of the fire apartment. All right, this is a little different. What we're going to do here is we're going to use the Cleveland load. We pulled our pre-connect. It's uncharged. We unscrew the nozzle. We add either 50 or 100 feet of Cleveland load. In this case, preferably 100 feet. We make our connection. We charge our line. And we're ready to leave the refuge of the adjoining apartment. Now we're talking about interior hallway buildings. You're going to have to team up. I embrace the concept of the engine or a fire company teaming up with the medical rescue. It gives us a pretty potent firefighting force. Forcible entry tools, we're taking up at least 200 feet of hose. Even though we're not in a standpipe equipped building, we're taking the 200 feet of hose so we can extend off of a pre-connect or a gated Y. We first have to locate that fire, and then we will designate and evacuate the attack stairwell. But we first have to locate the fire. Now here this officer is taking a look from the refuge of a closed stairway down the hallway. This is another technique. This is where you're going to use a rope bag and you're going to proceed down the hallway. You tie off the end of the rope bag on the hinge of the enclosed stairwell door and close the door. Keep the smoke out of the stairwell. Now you've already familiarized yourself with the floor below. You see that the hallway is, let's say, 150 feet long. You know you have 100 feet of rope in your rope bag. So it stands to reason if you run out of rope in your rope bag, the fire has to be closer to the other stairwell because the stairwells are 150 feet apart. So you may have a choice. Connect another rope or wind the whole thing back up, go down to the floor below and come up the other stairwell. If you find the fire, of course, close the door to the fire apartment. Now, in this case, would you be comfortable going down a hot, smoky hallway? Obviously, the door to the fire apartment is open, and that's why the hallway is dirty. In this case, are there other ways that we can determine the location of the fire? Yes. We've got a visual from the outside. Command to Engine 3, where the fire looks to be 60 feet from the Charlie Bravo corner. Okay, now we've got an idea how much hose we're going to need to reach that fire. What about if the fire is in apartment 555? Could we look at apartment 455, find 455, chances are it's directly below 555. Brothers and sisters, Most of us are on departments that do not have the staffing or the hose bed configurations that lend themselves to a conventional stairway stretch. In other words, laying hose up the stairs, laying it on the treads. Let's look at some alternatives. Could you drop a rope from a window? Where are we going to hoist it? Could we hoist it directly to the fire floor? Yes, you could, under two conditions. One, the hallway is clear. The door to the fire apartment is closed. And secondly, that the window is at or near the stairway. So if you get into trouble, if you run out of air, you follow the hose line back and you're by a stairway. That's very important. Otherwise, you're going to follow the hose line back and you're going to have to jump out the window. If the fire apartment door is intact, bring the hose line up to the door to the fire apartment, bring up at least 50 feet, tie off your line, charge it, and then you'll make your attack. Could you do the same thing with 2.5 or 3-inch hose? Yes, you could, but you're going to have to pull up at least 50 feet of hose. Remember, it is critical in this situation to control that door and do not open that door until you've flowed the line, you're hooded up, masked up, gloves on, ready to go, and all occupants and non-combatants are off that floor, because when you open that door, it's gonna get ugly. Well, that's about all the time that we have for today for this presentation. You know, we just scratched the surface on this subject. This is a small portion of a much larger program. I'd like to come back someday and we'll continue it. Just remember, brothers and sisters, how critical it is, your secret to success, your ingredients for success with fires in multiple dwellings is extensive pre-fire planning and size up. You gotta know before you go. Thank you very much. God bless you and may He keep you safe in our most noble profession.
We'd like to thank Captain Gustin for volunteering his time and efforts for making a valuable contribution to our program today.
Now it's time to revisit another contributor to the program as we check in with Captain Giamberini with another installment of his series, The 14 Traits of Fire Officer Leadership.
Hello and thank you for taking the time. I'm Andrew Giamberini, Captain with Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, 3rd Battalion. We're here today to talk about the fundamentals of fire officer leadership. The United States Marine Corps has listed 14 traits of leadership. The 14 leadership traits: justice, judgment, dependability, integrity, decisiveness, tact, initiative, enthusiasm, bearing, unselfishness, courage, knowledge, loyalty, and endurance. Good leaders have developed these qualities as strengths. We all have strengths in some and not so much in others. The idea is to make our weaknesses into our strengths. We certainly can't seek perfection, but we can always strive. You'll define these terms in your own words. With practice and conscious efforts, these terms can come to define you. Enthusiasm, the display of sincere interest and exuberance in the performance of duty. Even when the requirements are difficult, enthusiastic leaders set aside any negative aspects of the mission and focus on the positive energy they can bring to the table. It's not easy, but it works. It's contagious, and a show of enthusiasm often leads to truly inspirational behavior. People who are enthusiastic about their jobs will make personal sacrifices and educate themselves to do a better job. Men and women who are enthusiastic about being firefighters understand that sacrifice might come at a very high price. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Enthusiasm is the mother of effort, and without it, nothing great was ever achieved." Bearing. The U.S. Army Field Manual 6-22 states, military bearing is defined as having or projecting a commanding presence and a professional image of authority. Professional bearing is the way you conduct or carry yourself. Your manner should reflect alertness, competence, confidence, and control. The creation of a favorable impression in carriage, appearance, and personal conduct at all times. A company officer with professional bearing is driven toward a goal with purpose, jumping at opportunities with self-improvement that increase his ability to reach that goal. Professional bearing is about channeling that drive to other people. Leaders with bearing know where they stand and they understand the environment in which they work. They set an example for others to follow in both attitude and behavior. Professional bearing is more than outward appearance. The pressed uniform and close haircut and spit-shine boots is motivated by pride in appearance. Your professional bearing comes from inside. It is in pride of accomplishment and a culmination of your experiences. Company officers can only achieve true professional bearing through confidence in themselves and their crew. Unselfishness, avoidance of providing for one's own comfort and personal advancement at the expense of others. The quality of looking out for the needs of your subordinates before your own is the essence of leadership. The quality is not to be confused with putting these matters ahead of the accomplishment of the mission. Unselfish leaders make decisions that benefit as many as possible. They look out for the welfare of their teams beyond simple job descriptions, legal concerns, and even their own personal comfort. And they do this most particularly in difficult situations. Paramahansa Yogananda said, "There is a magnet in your heart that will attract true friends. That magnet is unselfishness, thinking of others first. When you learn to live for others, they will live for you." Eat last, go in first, come out last. Courage, the mental quality that recognizes fear of danger or criticism, but enables an individual to proceed in the face of it with calmness and firmness. The business of firefighting is a dangerous one. The importance of courage on the fire ground should be obvious. Knowing and standing for what is right, even in the face of popular disfavor, is not so obvious. Courage is never an easy commodity to find, whether it's disciplining a subordinate, standing up to superiors, or facing the inferno of a structure fire. Courage is situational. It lives in the moment when it is required for people who believe in themselves and in priorities beyond personal comfort and the risks of pain or failure. Courage is doing what's right, adhering to a higher standard of personal conduct, to lead by example, and to make tough decisions under stress and pressure. It is the inner strength that enables a company officer to take that extra step. Moral courage, standing up for your beliefs despite criticism. Physical courage, acting without regard for your physical welfare. Winston Churchill said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." Those are just a few of the 14 leadership traits. In future episodes, we'll take a look at others. Thanks for your time.
That's all the time we have for today's program.
Thanks for watching, and as always, if you have ideas for future topics, contact us in the Training Safety Division at the address on the screen.
Until next time, keep training and be careful while you're in the hot zone.